if I sound like shit, probably look like shit, it's because I've been sick the last week or so. But fear not, I can still code. So, Patreon wise, we're talking about cameras, and I thought I would show how I set this up. I will add a couple of rooms so that you can really see what it is. It's really not that difficult. A little tricky though. So I got a player here. He's just a cube, I know. And see, like there's actually no collisions here. I didn't bother putting that in. But as you can see, the camera follows him. We get to the bottom, the camera doesn't continue going, it stops. And it tracks up. But it's the same thing. Like I go over to this wall and it doesn't overshoot. But if I go over here, the camera kind of comes into this room, and I can move around this room. I can come back over here, go up into this room, out of this room, over in this room. Now there is one issue with the tracking camera, because you can enter it on anywhere. If you enter it way up on the corners like this, you will see that bit of a clipping there doing it this way, so just keep that in mind. If you don't use the tracking cameras and you build your level into like a grid style thing, then you wouldn't have that issue. But if you want that tracking to go with it, it's all about level design at that point in time. So how do we do that? So I'm using this camera system, and I have a player. He's called Square. He has his rigid body, a very simple move. He has a default camera, which is the starting camera. So let's just, for example, let's build where'd my other palette go? Okay, whatever, we'll use this one. So let's, I don't know, let's add on over here. I am going to just grab this stuff, and I'm going to come along and we'll stick it right along here. We'll make a hallway one. And then now you'll notice there's a little bit of a trick here. So my camera, its view range, the levels are built in that same kind of ratio, right? So for example, if I go and take this whole section, let's go down here, let's stick one here. All right, and just put a little bit of an entrance, I don't know, say right there. So, okay, so now we have these two new areas on our map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually build, or I'm going to make a sprite, because this just makes it easy. I'm going to 0 at Z, and I'm going to take the sprite and I'm going to stretch them out like this. And we need I'm going to use a polygon collider. you can use a box collider for this, totally fine. So with the trigger, I'm going to get rid of that. Now tag wise, I use one called bed, but just rooms or something. But I have them filtered by tag, so all these rooms have a trigger, and they all use the same tag. You can name the tag whatever you want. So I just happen to have bed in there, so here we have, now we have a room. We built a room, right? We can call this the hallway room. And I stuff it into my little thing here to keep it clean. Now in here I have they have an FSM on them, so I'm gonna copy that and I'm gonna paste it. And what's in this FSM is like literally nothing. There's no actions in here. You could put some logic in here, right? Um, but all there is a variable of a game object, which is out here. So it's nice and easy. So the other thing we're going to need is a virtual camera. Now, keep in mind, you can have as many virtual cameras as you want, because a virtual camera isn't a camera, it's a transform. And your actual main camera uses its transform to move around. So you only have one camera, but it's using these ones like position. So all we're going to do is I'm going to make, like, these have virtual cameras. So I'm just going to create a camera. Virtual camera. And I'm going to stick it right over here. And I'm going to zero Z out. And I'm going to have this one do absolutely nothing. And we could add some stuff, but I'm going to have this one do nothing. And this one's going to be hallway room cam. So then he's going to go into the cams, and I'm going to deactivate him. Now I'm going to go into my hallway room, and that's my hallway room cam. So now this trigger knows what camera it is. Now a little different is with something a little longer. Not that that's crazy long. I should have built it a little longer. I don't know if I lined that up right, and we'll find out. There we go. Okay. So, if I look at the rooms, so we have that room. So we need a room over here. And again, all I'm going to do is I'm going to build a sprite. This one will be a little different though. Like this, the sprite won't be, per se. But the camera will be a little bit different. So all we're just going to take him out, fill up that area, add our polygon, mark it as a trigger, give it our tag, and get rid of the sprite renderer. There, now we have this top hallway, and that will be our room. So it needs this same FSM, which is just holding a variable for us, so it needs its own camera. So we're going to create a new virtual camera, and I'm going to do, well, I'll just do I'll do one of these, but we are going to call it a framing one. So it needs to know that it needs to look at and follow the player, but it doesn't need an aiming, but it also needs an extension for the confiner. And the confiner wants a polygon, which is why I'm using polygon, collider. So this top hallway, that's why we gave it a polygon collider. So where are we here? Left, right, top, right hallway. Oh, right there. So yeah, so it needs a collider. So we give it a collider. So now it's locked to this area. I should probably rename this one. Let's stick that into our cams and deactivate it. So on our player, it's kind of where all the logic is. And all we do is we have a default starting camera. And we're just running a trigger event with a tag. This is where I got the tag bet from. It's there. You can call it room, you can call it whatever you want. But you don't even need a tag in reality, but it is a little better. So all we're gonna do is, like, if we hit any one of these colliders, we're gonna store that new room. We pop over, we're gonna go into that room, right? We're going to go into this FSM. We're going to pull out its camera. We're going to call it the incoming camera. We're going to deactivate our current camera, activate our incoming camera, so it would be that one, and then we're going to do this little thing at the very end, after we've done that logic, is we're going to make our current camera the incoming camera. So our new current camera is the incoming camera now. And then we go back and wait for a new trigger. And that's literally all we have to do. So if I hit play, right, and if I, well, first let's just make sure everything works, right? So we move over here, this camera activates, this camera reactivates, right? We go into this zone, we go over here, and oh, we have an issue here, apparently. So I'll have to fix that. Apparently I put the reference wrong. So we come into our little hallway. Now we have this little traveling one. And if I come down into here, it goes into there. So these cameras have, I think it's the clipping. Right, because that camera is there. I think I didn't put their Zs at a good spot. Dealing with 2D, always just keep everything in the right Z, like unless you're building like a background or something like that. For certain things you can get away with it, but beyond that, try to maintain like order within your Z. Right, okay, so let's test that again. Now that I put those Zs, let's just speed this guy up. Let's go double the speed. Alright, so we come trucking along, we go up to this area. Oh, he's going to the wrong camera. He's going to this one. So let's go to this room, top hallway. Needs to go to the top hallway camera. There we go. Now he comes trucking along, and he's got the tracking, right? Right, like these have no collisions. I mean, I could technically go off the map there, but that's not the point. Right, so we swap over. We come down here. Now, if you want these rooms to switch a little quicker, like you see that time there, if I go into the main camera, see how we're at a default ease in or ease in out at 2 seconds. If I take it down to 0.5, it's much snappier. Right, so now we have this kind of nice flowing little 2D kind of Zelda style camera happening. Right, so now the only tricky thing is if we're kind of hitting this corner and we hit it, it clips that bit of a corner there. So you just got to keep that in mind when you're doing your level design, that don't just, if you have a spot like that, don't just leave those cameras or those zones empty. You know, put trees or whatever in there in those corners, or design it so it's not going to have those bends and corners, but the odds are you probably will have some bends and corners. So I mean, by all means, you can also flicker the camera out, darken it out, and lighten it back up a bit. If you have post-processing the vignette, right, like if we had this stuff on, okay, well, apparently it's enemy, I don't know why. This could just be a method to trick that system is, right, because we have this little darkening effect, and you could really quickly, you probably might even want a little bit on that all the time, but you could, as that camera slides over, when it's hitting that, hits that point right there, just kind of darken it and lighten it, just kind of real quick maybe. Put some smoothness on that, because that looks kind of ugly like that. Yeah, something like that. A little bit of a flicker, maybe. I mean, it totally depends on your level design. I mean, if swinging by and seeing like a couple trees sitting there isn't the end of the world, then don't worry about it. To me, I mean, that would look totally fine, right? But yeah. But there's a nice little, relatively easy to set up camera system. Like I said, so our rooms are a trigger using a polygon 2D that are marked with a tag, and you can put them out, you can make them as big as you want. In reality, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, and we could put music to them, we could put logic to them as well, right? Because we could have the player, when he enters a room here, as we enter the room, to fire off an event to the new room right here, right? Be like a spawn your enemies, or pause the game while the camera moves and then unpause it, whatever the case is, right? But we could put an event here to actually call into that room if we wanted something in there. in that way, again, you don't have to. But beyond that, I just got a bunch of cameras everywhere, right? So we have cameras that are just completely stationary, that are just literally set to there. And we have some that use that same collider as a confining, and then the camera is set for framing transposer. That's the only difference. The other thing, I mean, you could do technically, like if you look at, is it this hallway cam? No, it's hallway room. Let's look at the right hallway cam. So this guy here uses that that's the framing, and so it moves, right? It's moving along with us. Now it's a very narrow hallway. That's just the level design. Knowing that I would have to build stuff in around here, right? I mean, if I really wanted to, I could probably, I don't know what that is top of my head, but we can see. Alright, so 2. Let's go 2. I mean, technically you could do something like that. Ring the different cams. I don't know. I mean, it could be a neat effect. I mean, that's kind of a narrow hallway. You get zoomed in pretty far that way. But you could have, say, a bigger room. Maybe it's a boss battle, and you just want to zoom out that little bit. It's a big boss or something like that. You know, you could have, you know, that be, you know, a bigger room like that, right? Like, oh, boof, big boss, right? And of course, you'd build your room to be that size. But anyways, there is some cool camera tricks.